A recent decision by Fair Work Australia should be a reminder for employees to be careful how you use social media. A hairdresser was fired after posting a comment on Facebook about a job warning. More on this and the constant challenges of social media in the workplace. I'm joined by Joydeep Kaur from People Plus Culture Strategies. Joydeep, great to have you on this morning. Look, we might actually just bring up, I think we've got the email or the posting this person put up here. Can you just give us a bit of a brief explanation of what happened?
Yeah, it's an interesting case, but perhaps not unremarkable. I think a lot of employees would be thinking, if I feel a bit dissatisfied about something that's happened at work, I'm entitled to talk to my friends about that. I'll use social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter to do that. That's exactly what this employee did, a little bit disgruntled in relation to something that her employer had done, issued a warning, given holiday pay by cheque rather than cash, which is what she was expecting, posts this notice on her Facebook site, presumably to communicate with people who she would be regarding as close family and friends. Of course, this comes to the employer's attention. They don't take too kindly to it and, in fact, make a decision to terminate her employment.
And now that was reversed, from what I understand, was it, in terms of the Fair Work Tribunal?
Yeah, so she brought an unfair dismissal claim. What was interesting about the decision was, even though it was found that the dismissal was unfair, some very clear and stern commentary by the tribunal about the risks of social media. A very clear message to employees that don't think that when you are posting things on social media sites such as Facebook that you're operating in your private space.
Look, is this becoming, do you think, more of a prevalent issue? And I suppose, is there much clarity in terms of, where an employee or an employer stands?
I think this is something that is really challenging a lot of businesses and employers. It's not again, surprising that a lot of employers are adopting this approach of let's wait and see, let's see how this social media thing settles down. From what I'm seeing and the work that we're doing with our business clients in terms of addressing this particular issue, it's a nightmare. Employers don't know what to do with it. Employers don't know how far they should be seeking to regulate it. Some employers are being very proactive and introducing specific social media policies. Some are taking a little bit more of a softly approach and relying on their existing harassment policies, bullying policies and their existing IT policies. I don't think that's enough. I think employers have got to be taking the message very clearly to their employees, proactively, and saying that, look, again, similar to what the tribunal said in this decision, don't think that you're operating in your private space if you're going to be saying or do anything that in any way reflects on the employer.
What about, I suppose, the traditional lines between work life and personal life? Is that what is causing the issue? Because I imagine most people think they get home, look, I'm done with work, freedom of speech, I can say, vent maybe, but that's becoming the issue, the fact that it's so open, it's out there in the public space, that it's blurring that distinction between personal and work life?
Correct, and I think the real issue here is that whether we're talking about social media or whether we're talking about certain other high-profile examples of sexual harassment cases that are being run at the moment, what we are seeing and have been continuing to see for a number of months, if not years, is a further blurring of those boundaries between what is a person's work life and what is a person's private life. The way in which people work these days doesn't necessarily offer that dichotomy between when work starts and when work stops. Social media, I think, is just one byproduct of that blurring of the boundaries. Off-site events, we're coming up to Christmas party season, we're going to see further blurring of the boundaries when it comes to those kinds of events.
I've heard, I suppose, anecdotal stories about companies or sporting organisations in particular banning things like Facebook and Twitter, saying, look, there's more pitfalls than probably than upsides for it. Is that going too far, trying to ban people from actually working? And is that actually something that an employer can impose on somebody?
An employer certainly has its rights to regulate how their employees and other workers use their IT systems when they're at work. My own view is that you've got to be pragmatic about these kinds of things. Sure, you can restrict a person's access to Facebook and Twitter when they're at work, but if a person really wants to communicate with someone via Facebook during work time, they'll just get an iPhone and do it. So it's not really that hard. It's more about trying to get employees to understand what is it that you're really trying to achieve as the employer. In this case, the employer took issue with an employee sort of disparaging them in public, and that's certainly one of the most common grounds of Facebook complaints. The other is forms of bullying, harassment that do take place using social media. That is obviously very problematic for the employer, because the person who feels bullied or harassed can sue the employer.
You touched on it before, but I mean, what would be your top suggestions then, I suppose, for employers looking at trying to framework some sort of policy in terms of social media?
The first thing is be very aware of the fact that absent a policy and absent very clear statements about the conduct you expect of employees, you won't be able to do too much. It doesn't matter how angry you are about what an employee does, you're going to have to be pretty clear about what their expectations are, otherwise you'll be held accountable by the tribunal. So that policy framework is very important, but mere paper policies without the necessary accompanying education is again going to be seen to be deficient. So have the policies, educate, and get your employees to try to understand what it is that you're really trying to achieve.
Do you think on the other side of the ledger, on the employee side, there's a level of common sense involved? I mean, going home or doing from work and you know, bagging your employer or your boss, I mean, it's pretty fraught with danger, I would have thought.
It is fraught with danger, but the reality is people do that. Whether they're doing it in writing, whether they're doing it in dinner time conversations, whether they're doing it with friends at barbecues on the weekend. I can't imagine there'd be too many employees that work in this country that wouldn't be talking about their employer in some way, shape or form in their private time.
And do you think this is going to become more and more of an issue? As I suppose it just seems like there's an insatiable appetite for social media at the moment.
I think it will be more and more of an issue. I think this is probably the third or fourth case on this particular issue we've seen in the last few months. I think we're going to see a lot more of them, and it'll be the employer response and approach to it that I think is the most interesting thing to observe. All
right, Jody, always great to talk. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we're going to have to take a break.